Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on our UK Construction Week online platform. This is the first of a number that we'll be doing regularly on this platform, so thank you for joining us. We obviously had our two-day event 2 weeks ago, so hopefully you're enjoying this platform. I've got a great session for you today. We're looking at how and why is tech driving the growth of MMC? Before we start and I introduce the panel, I just want to show you some of the features on this platform. So you can get involved with this at the end. We're going to ask some questions from you to the panel. So if you want to put in your questions, you can do that on the live discussion box. And we're also going to put a poll up there, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So if you want to take part in either of those, please check out the live discussion box on your screen. So on to today, and delighted to be joined by a fantastic panel as we're looking at tech driving the growth of MMC. So first, the rise of digitalisation and new innovations in construction technology, such as MMC and off-site delivery methods, are disrupting the sector, and they're creating a new paradigm as well. So the approaches that we're using are allowing us to build more productively and profitably. So really want to see today what the challenges are and what the, I guess how bit of industry leadership has shaped that kind of growth and what we can look forward to in the future. So to really join me on this panel, I'll introduce Nigel first. So Nigel Fraser is the industry advisor to Build Offsite, which industry-wide campaigning organisation promotes the greater uptake of offsite techniques by UK construction. Previous roles include Head of Systems and Standards at BAA, so he's very well qualified to talk to us about this. Jamie Johnson is Board Director and Head of Global Systems at Bryden Wood, and he's who are leaders in MMC. He also is the design lead for the UK Construction Innovation Hub, and he spent 20 years working across the built environment, and also helps us on our UK Construction Week steering committee. Steve Cooper is European Sales VP for Construction and Engineering at Oracle and spent 28 years in the engineering and construction industries. He's seen firsthand how trends and technology have developed to better meet the customer's needs. And Philly Mazzutucci is Director of Digitalisation and has spent 15 years at Skanska. He's now responsible for delivering UK productivity through rapid adoption of new technologies at Skanska, a key task to improve the operating margin of the business, enabling the project teams to deliver safer, faster and more resourcefully efficient projects. So welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to start really by allowing each of you in turn to kind of give us a sort of snapshot of where you see the adoption of MMC within either your organisation, in the sector, or in Nigel's case, as I'm going to come to you first, the body that you represent, the companies that you represent. So Nigel, I'll come to you first. How do you currently see the state of play as we've come? We've had an amazingly disruptive year, or over a year now. Be interesting to hear your thoughts from Build Offsite on how you feel that's affected tech and the adoption of MMC.
Okay, thank you. It's been a challenging year, but equally the offsite sector was able to respond in some ways quite quickly to the restrictions and some of the constraints that hit the construction sector. At the end of last year, we saw the publication of the Construction Playbook, which is, I think, one of the most significant things I have seen since I moved into the construction sector, because it's very much client-driven, and it's putting forward a case for doing things quite differently, but building on some of the lessons we've learned from a number of ways that major clients have been operating over the last decade. So I think that's a really great initiative. And we're seeing that the data-driven design processes are now facilitating the efficient manufacture, logistics, and assembly of buildings, and that's at the sort of a beginning of a, relatively speaking, at the beginning of a journey. Although some of us have been doing it for quite a while. Clearly, there's a huge focus on the energy situation and climate change at the moment, and in terms of modern methods of construction, we need to do everything we can to look at how we can help with that, because as a sector we have a big footprint, and clearly the digital aspects of design and simulation, modeling and controlling systems, etc., offer us quite a lot of scope there. We also need to look at how we make things more resilient, and how we get the most out of the embedded carbon that we put into our buildings, and how we can design for longevity and adaptability and all those sorts of things. So yeah, we're doing some interesting things in Build Offsite, and our focus is very much on both the digital and the climate challenges that we've all got.
Brilliant, thank you, Nigel. That's great. And yeah, we'll come to the questions when we've heard everyone speak. So some points there that I think we'll touch on. I should also say we're going to conduct a poll whilst we're talking, which we'll come to at the end. So we're asking a question: do you think MMC is here to stay, or is it just a fad? So that's in your discussion box. So if you could perhaps have a look if you want to vote on the poll, and then we'll discuss it at the end. But perfect, thanks, Nigel. Jamie, I want to come to you next. Welcome.
Hello there. Thanks for inviting me to talk on this.
No worries. So yes, so tell us, obviously you've been pioneering new methods of construction at Bridon Wood, and long been an advocate for MMC. So I'd be interested to hear your take on where we're at.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a convergence. And I don't think it's purely to do with COVID that things are accelerating. I think it would have happened anyway, actually. A lot of the things that we've been looking at for a number of years, I think, are finally sort of really coming to fruition. So I was revisiting it recently, actually. The first book on platforms we put out was 2017, where we started to propose this idea of cross-sector common components getting used at scale, and that's how you start to make the big shift. And then it was 2018 IPA, you picked it up, and the hub was set up. But yeah, the last 12 months we've seen, as Nigel referenced, the playbook, I think, was a phenomenal piece of work. Probably couldn't have happened without COVID, because you probably couldn't have got the number of senior industry players, senior government players, that sort of broad cross-section suppliers coming together to put that document together. You couldn't have done, I think, without the kind of everyone having the ability to hop on Teams calls. So that, I think, was incredibly good use of the last year, and you can start to see government really leaning into some of the things that the hub has been talking about, IPAs have been talking around. So it wasn't complete coincidence, but it was then sort of backed up by the work the hub's been doing on defining the need, which was finally getting the proper database or evidence base together to analyse the pipelines of future government departments and show quite how much commonality there is between building types and sector types, and therefore quite how applicable a limited number of components could be. So I think that the playbook sets the context and says, look, this is how government plans to procure social infrastructure moving forwards. The hub's work says, and here's the evidence to support the hypothesis that if you had a sort of limited number of components, you could use them at massive scale. And that's how you start to get the consistency and the pipeline and the all the things that the supply chains really need to start to sort of gear up for a manufacturing approach. So those, I think, are incredibly exciting, and I don't think we're anywhere near feeling the kind of full impact of those yet. We at the same time had Landsec delivering the Forge, which is the first private sector client using platforms for commercial office blocks. Again, that's sort of giving you more evidence and proof points. So yeah, it felt like there was a whole load of things sort of coming together that are really starting to create a kind of consistency. And the other, yeah, I also agree with Nigel on the sustainability. It feels to me like we lost a few years where sustainability wasn't top of the agenda. It was important, and it wasn't for a bit, and it feels like there was a sort of lost gap. But the kind of focus now on, with recognition of climate crisis and intense urbanization of things, the real focus on embodied energy, embodied carbon, whole life performance, procuring for value, all of these sorts of things. It feels like there's a real shift coming, and I think we're anywhere near feeling the kind of full impact of those yet. We at the same time had Landsec delivering the Forge, which is the first private sector client using platforms for commercial office blocks. Again, that's sort of giving you more evidence and proof points. So yeah, it felt like there was a whole load of things sort of coming together that are really starting to create a kind of consistency. And the other, yeah, I also agree with Nigel on the sustainability. It feels to me like we lost a few years where sustainability wasn't top of the agenda. It was for a bit, and it wasn't for a bit. And it feels like there was a sort of lost gap. But the kind of focus now on And yeah, the poll's interesting actually. I mean, we've talked about MMC for decades. It's been on and off the agenda, and I think people have dabbled with it. Not to prejudge the answer, but it does genuinely feel like all the bits are in place now to sort of make the fundamental shift. Or okay, another way of asking the question: if you don't have all the bits in place now, what else are you waiting for before you decide that this is that we need to make the shift and that we've now got everything we need to hand? It's just a question of deciding to get on and do it, I guess.
Brilliant, thanks, Jamie. That's great. A lot of what you mentioned there, we heard about that UK Construction Week 2 weeks ago as well. So it's great to keep that conversation going. So next we'll come to Steve Cooper from Oracle. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Nathan.
So yeah, it'd be great to hear from your point as a cloud services provider and technology supporter. What changes you've seen and yeah, the view from you.
Yeah, obviously we're a sort of service provider to the industry, really. So I think from our side, we're definitely seeing a sentiment change and a conversation change in the market, and it's not necessarily the last sort of 6 months. It's been over the last 5 years has been evolving. So where we were very much talking around sort of point solutions into the industry that were probably quite traditional. Now we're having much broader conversations around sort of bigger topics, I suppose, that that bring the industry into sort of the mainstream. So we're having conversations around manufacturing and engineering to order, both of which fall within our division. So we've got a sort of hybrid division that looks after sort of construction on the one hand, either buildings or civil engineering, and then big manufacturing and engineering to order side. So it's actually brought the whole conversation closer together. So we're starting to look at sort of more hybrid approach to where people are looking to move their businesses and the sort of demands they're coming to from the industry and the conversation. So the conversations we're having now are potentially radically different to what we were having a year ago, 2 years ago, and even 9 months ago. So it's refreshing, to be honest, and it's also sort of drawing us into other platforms that we've got that we never thought we'd be talking to these organisations about. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting time for us. Great.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're in a unique position, I guess, to see all the different sectors, how they operate, and then have oversight. And then you're seeing the construction sector probably moving quite quickly.
It's also not a UK centred focus. So whilst the terminology, modern methods of construction, may well be starting to come out from a UK perspective, the initiatives themselves we're seeing across Europe, and in fact, talking to my colleagues across the globe, we're seeing them in all sorts of other markets around the globe as well. So I think that's a really good sign as well.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, Steve. Philippe, welcome.
Hi, Nathan. Thank you.
When I was looking at your CV, I was impressed how long you've been at Skanska. You've pretty much your whole career. So that's amazing. So you must know the company inside out, and you're driving the digital transformation. So look forward to hearing how that's going.
Certainly. Yeah, thank you, Nathan. I think so far what I've heard from the conversation, we do agree with absolutely everything that's been said, which is great to see. Obviously the panel is quite positively biased, so obviously I was going to respond positively to that. But I think in terms of answering your primary question, I'll give you two lenses. One, a macro level lens on how MMC plays a part. I think over the last year or so with the pandemic, we have become a very reflective society, and we really we're making time to deeply reflect on the impact that our actions and behaviors have on the world, on nature, on society and communities. And I think that kind of focus on the macro level is beginning to play its part in the decisions that the industry is now making with regards to finding alternative ways of delivering our contracts. in a more sustainable way, safer, environmentally friendly, and so on. And then you link that to the efforts that the government is making in providing industry guidance on how to successfully achieve that, and plus the readiness of technology available right now to everyone. Technology is no longer a privilege; it's now a built-in component of your working environment. So you put all these ingredients together, and I think there's a very positive outlook at macro level on how MMC can be a catalyst of an improvement on the construction industry. At micro level, from a Skanska point of view, we are ready for adoption, and we have been for many years now. And the approach we're taking now is systematic and structured. So we're responding to primarily our business needs, and gradually we keep on increasing the use of MMC because of the benefits that it brings. And there is obviously the because we're open and willing to do so, there's the associated investment that may come with it, and we recognize and truly support the adoption of these new technologies and new way of delivering contracts. We do that through the endorsement of the playbook, for example, being part of that, our involvement with Construction Innovation Hub. Really enjoy the collaboration and the conversations that take place at that level with colleagues here present actually on the board. So yeah, I think that's our outlook. And Skanska, yes, I do know Skanska very well. I think it says a lot about Skanska that I've been my career has been in there, and I think we play a key part. We are fully aware of the role that we play as tier one contractor in the UK sector to improve and to leave behind a legacy of an improved and better industry. So, and we play that role really seriously, and I think it says a lot about where we are today as an industry.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's great. You kind of partly answered our first question, actually, which was how have business models changed over the last 12 months, specifically around the adoption of technology in MMC. So I think you said there you're ready. So does that mean you've made all the changes to business models, or are there still some that have got to be made? And if you are ready, what do you see as the biggest challenge?
Okay, so yeah, I think in terms of the changes made, I highlight the word they used earlier. It's a gradual change. We don't step change for obvious reasons as tier one contractor, but we do take a gradual change. So it's been now for a few years that we are willingly adopting MMC where possible and where we see the benefits are going to be very easily achievable in effect. And but what we have at the moment is we're developing a strategic approach to make the adoption of MMC easier and better understood by our customers and by our project teams. So it's basically it's a model, it's an approach that will enable and facilitate this this adoption. I think that the biggest challenge is it's a positive challenge, is the ability to engage with the technology that is ever rising. And it's not just hot technology in terms of the factory environments that we can create, but also the soft technology in terms of the use of data to enable those behaviors, to enable that factory approach environment. And I think that it's a wonderful challenge to have, where you can actually adopt and kind of take on board those new technologies, and how can you best use them and deploy them to enable that off-site manufacture that we aspire to achieve.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Thanks, Philip. Nigel, I'll ask you. I mean, I guess I know obviously Build Offsite represent a number of different companies who are, maybe they've been using offsite construction techniques for years, like someone like McDonald's, and there are others, I guess, that perhaps are newer. I mean, you've probably seen a number of these companies change their business models. What have you seen as the biggest challenge?
That's a bit tricky to view actually from this position in this environment, because we've been doing everything on a Zoom calls and Teams meetings, so we haven't been getting out to as many projects as we would normally do, and see it from that perspective. What I have seen is a real awareness that things are changing, and that it feels like it's a tipping point, and an increase in innovation, and a realization that there is a lot to contribute to the sustainability debate from construction. So a few years ago we commissioned a report on the sustainability aspects of build offsite or offsite methods, and the interest in that has surged again, and there's been a lot more focus on we know there are benefits from using some of these MMC techniques, but it wasn't always easy to demonstrate those benefits. So there's been a lot more focus on making sure that people get the message out to the market as to why you can develop projects with more air tightness and better environmental performance and things like that. So I think that there's symptoms or reactions, responses to the wider picture that's already been painted, that as Jamie said, the sustainability topic has been around now for quite a long time, but it's certainly moved into a lot more focus in the last 12 months than it has been.
Yeah, no, that's definitely for sure. So
sorry, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry, Steve or Jamie, did you want to add anything on this, specifically around the business models? I guess is what you've seen, changes in the last. Is there anyone you can think of specifically that's made big changes to how their business models work?
To echo a thing Steve said, we're seeing an awful lot more interest from North America, particularly. They don't use as Steve said, they don't necessarily use the term MMC, but the idea of industrialized construction is getting much more traction. We're seeing a huge amount of interest from that side. So that's been, again, I think it was happening anyway. I think the fact that everyone's on Teams calls and it's less important where you are in the world has made a big difference, and it sort of lowered maybe the barriers to entry for us. So my guess is things will move there incredibly quickly. They seem to have been sort of debating the topic for a long time, and whereas in the UK we maybe have leapt to an answer which is it's all off-site too quickly, I think they've been having a more nuanced debate, and they're now starting to sort of ground some of these ideas. But that I think is very interesting. And there's also something I'm fascinated by, which is the kind of more entrepreneurial spirit maybe that we're seeing from that part of the world. So the questions we're getting are incredibly consistent from both clients and general contractors and suppliers, like right the way down through the supply chain. They're asking things in a particular way, in a way that we're not seeing in the UK. Here it feels like the sort of government's got the hang of this, lower tiers are maybe getting the hang of it, tier ones are a bit nervy because they're not sure what it means to them, and so there's a bit of sort of uncertainty in there. It feels a bit more joined up. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see what happens. But yeah, Steve said this is not a kind of UK thing. There's a global recognition of common problems. Industrialized construction is where we're heading, and it feels like that's again something that's a bit more joined up and consistent than it has been previously.
Steve, did you want to follow on that? Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, just to add to this, I think the other thing to watch is new entrants. So whilst there's an evolution of the existing structure and organisations within that structure, organisations like Legal and General, for example, who you would traditionally view as an insurance company, all of a sudden they're now in the house building marketplace. So obviously organisations like that have deep pockets and can afford to fund some of these initiatives, and they've obviously spotted a significant opportunity on the back of the shift in not only the shift in what's possible, but also the demand from government around how to produce housing quicker and cheaper. And I don't think that's the end. I think there'll be others that are either about to launch, or we've definitely seen some that are preparing themselves for launch. So I think the industry could look a little bit different in a few years' time.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Next question. This is around, I guess, how MMC and technology working together can, we've touched on all of these, but specifically looking at, I guess, maybe examples, how it can save time, quality, improve quality, save costs, sustainability and skilled labour, solve the skilled labour shortage, because we know that's an issue at the moment, and improve worksite safety. So I don't know, Philly, is that something you, as a tier one contractor, would say you've got examples of firsthand?
Examples of firsthand, it will be numerous actually. The approach we take for our contracts is we break down our packages, and we kind of identify what packages can actually be done, using industrialized construction. It's actually a term that we use, Jamie, as well. So it's a good point you're making there, because it's not just offsite or MMC. There's many components are associated to that approach. So we kind of analyze which ones of these packages have we best been of benefit to deliver through industrialized construction methodologies, and then absolutely you can then see the benefits that brings in doing so. And our M&E, for example, packages tend to be mostly done following these principles, and the benefits are great. You see a reduction in cost, reduction time spent on site, therefore leads to a safer environment. And just like that, we also take adoption of we call them flying factories, also known recognized as near site factories, where we imitate that factory environment but on very close to a site. Reduces logistics, it reduces our carbon impact on that project. And again, safety of our labor is improved. Nathan, I think the examples are numerous, and I think really what's exciting is the opportunity to actually put this all of it together and start using that as a framework of going forward, a framework of making this a consistent approach. So in that respect, yes to everything you said in terms of the impact they can have on our industry and our business.
Brilliant. And I guess Nigel or Jamie, the Construction Playbook, these are all part of the Construction Playbook, aren't they? In terms of all sustainability. I know in terms around. Will this help us with diversity, being able to get new people into the sector? Nigel, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the clear benefits of taking work offsite and into a manufacturing type environment is that the work is actually defined in more detail, and you're not reliant on people having a vast amount of very broad training to operate on a site. You're training a team of operatives to do a specific series of operations to a very high quality and repeatability, and but it's that takes effort in terms of defining the work, but once it's been defined, then the training is relatively straightforward, and it overcomes and bypasses a lot of skill shortages. And the big difference I've seen is that when I first got involved with offsite in the UK construction sector, it was basically that the norm was construction in a shed. Somebody had a big shed somewhere, and what you saw on site was largely happening in a weatherproof environment. But now I see a lot more true manufacturing going on, and the productivity and cost benefits of that are significant.
Brilliant. Jamie, did you want to say anything on this, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've been looking at for ages. Actually, one of the first things we did back in 2004, I think Nigel was our client back when it was BAA, as it was at the time. We did a piece of work for Gatwick and Heathrow airports, and we set up a manufacturing facility in the last versions of the product we developed, and it was called the Common Product Team, which tells you something. We're actually built by people from Crawley Job Centre, so just like automotive doesn't use mechanics, we train people up. Hopefully people have seen we've got examples where we've used ex-Gurkhas, ex-British Army to build pharmaceutical facilities. And we've often found, actually, if you're doing some of this stuff, it helps not to have construction people. So if you train up somebody who doesn't know that's not how you normally build a building, and as Nigel says, you teach them a series of simple tasks, they go, yeah, seems quite sensible, looks like an airport, it's fine. Construction people can't help but come in and go, yeah, I should probably whack a bit off that, I bet I could saw a bit off that, I bet I could make that. They sort of come with that kind of problem solving mindset, which is not always helpful. The last or one of the recent things we did was one of the first iterations of platforms we had manufactured by Prison Industries for the Ministry of Justice, which was nothing to do, I mean, it got cost savings, but that wasn't the driver. It was to show how you could upskill serving prisoners. You could give them skills and opportunities. They were less likely to reoffend. It was actually a kind of social return investment piece. But again, the implications of being able to take unemployed people or serving or ex-prisoners or ex-services, give them skills and opportunity, massively diversify the workforce, tackle skills gap, all of that stuff I think is massively powerful. And the stuff we're doing for Landsec, we got some UKRI funding, first as an R&D project, now as a demonstrator project to demonstrate what automation looks like on site. And it's not 6-axis robots. It took automotive a long time to get to that point. They started with fairly simple automation, and we're using reach stackers to move big components around. But it's showing how you could have half the number of people on site, you could double the productivity, you can make things much, much safer, much higher quality. So there's endless statistics we've got around all of the things that you mentioned in the sort of 30, 40, 50, 100% improvement range. It's not incremental. These are quite dramatic benefits we can get our hands on with known technology now if we want to.
That's big financial savings that would equate to as well. So Steve, so I guess from your holistic view, Oracle, what I guess you're seeing that firsthand.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but I don't want to jump into this and say the market is moving to a manufacturing model. It's not necessarily. Where I think the opportunity is picking the best bits of manufacturing, engineering to order, and using those in the right way. So it's more, I mentioned it before, it's more this hybrid model of bringing some of the really good best practice and technologies into the market because they're proven, and using them in an appropriate way so that actually we can shortcut the innovation process.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Okay.
Sorry, can I build on that? Just leap in, because Philippe made this point as well, that this is quite a nuanced sort of ecosystem of things we're talking about. And I think the industry likes kind of silver bullets or simple ideas. So they go, right, you mean offsite, you mean volumetric in a shed? And you go, not really, no. It's the range of techniques and digital and physical. And, as Steve said, it's sort of hybrid multitude of things that are coming together. There is no one single answer for any project. And I think that is one of the blockers that people are sort of getting caught up in the language or having too simplistic a view of this. It's not easy, and there is a range of things, but the benefits are massive. But I think that's a conversation that the industry needs to be having about what do we really mean by MMC, because it doesn't necessarily mean off-site.
Yeah, I think, well, that kind of leads perfectly on to my next question, really, which was, where do we get the learnings and expertise for this to be able to do things efficiently? Well, Steve, perhaps for you to start with this one, because I guess, we've talked a little bit about knowledge from engineering and other sectors. Where should we go to learn?
I think all other sectors. It's not only manufacturing. I think that other sectors that have made significant advancements over the years, like retail, for example. They've learned some differences around different business models and tried different things, especially around data, because this is a lot of this is going to come back to data and how you build integrated processes and how you support new sort of working models. So I think that, I wouldn't like to say you've got to focus on one sector. I can see an influx of people from across different sectors that are just bringing, going to Jamie's point, they're not constrained by what they already know around our industry. They're bringing a more open approach that is really challenging current practice and trying to find what's possible.
Yep. And I guess, there's people like Build Offsite, Nigel, right, that people can learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, Build Offsite's a bit of a strange organisation in the sense that it's not a trade association. It's got clients in it, designers, manufacturers, main contractors, specialist suppliers, and even material suppliers. It's sort of a cross section. But the one thing that we do find is everybody's very keen to share learning, and there's a lot of knowledge transfer going on. Most of the projects that have been going on over the last year during the shutdown have involved different members contributing different chapters to new guidance and sharing learning on things that are happening but are less visible because we're not traveling around so much. So it's that there is a lot of guidance out there, and there's a lot of willingness to share that learning, because the offsite sector is still the exception rather than the rule, and we need that transition to take place. We need it to become the norm. We need designs to start on a premise of using MMC rather than responses to tenders providing non-compliant alternatives that have been kind of reverse engineered in the limited time frame that's available to respond to a tender. So I think we are seeing a change, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I guess it helps that certain government projects now is offsite MMC first, isn't it? So
yeah,
that's a change in the mindset.
Yes, and there's definitely a learning curve to go through in terms of doing that and complying with the Construction Playbook, because we need to do it in a way that demonstrates there's open competition, there's healthy competition in the market, and that means getting better at specifying things in terms of performance rather than being prescriptive about which products to use and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of learning that we all need, whether we're clients or suppliers or designers or whatever. And as Jamie said, it's the optimum is likely to be a hybrid. There are certain things that are very likely to be on site in terms of some of the preparation work, etc. But you've still got to manage the interface between that very carefully in order to deliver the benefits of offsite.
And Jamie, I guess the Construction Innovation Hub have been working in this area. They're a place to go to learn as well.
Yeah, we've been trying obviously to publish everything we've done for the hub, but there's a lot more stuff coming out on the value toolkit, for instance, which to Nigel's point, I think that moving forward, procurement shouldn't just be on lowest cost. We should be a bit more sophisticated about whether it's lowest cost plus carbon benefits plus upskilling people, opportunities, social engagement. There's a whole load of things we should be focusing on as an industry. So I think that's going to change the conversation. So yeah, and again, the fact that it's all sort of incredibly aligned in terms of what central government's saying, what the hub's demonstrating, the kind of evidence that's coming out. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more stuff coming out of the hub in the next sort of 12 months in terms of the platform's rule book will help move the debate forward, the value toolkit and the beta testing of that. So yeah, again, it's an incredible resource, and we'd encourage people to engage with the hub, find out what the hub's doing, and use that as a kind of a repository of learning that can be drawn upon.
And Nathan, if I may, I'll build that from that point that Jamie is making there. And in fact, the theme that's been forming this conversation, which is around where do I go for more knowledge? Who do I speak to? And I would say, let's go to the innovative companies, the innovative people who want to be involved in this. if you look at the common denominator between CIH, between those who were involved in the playbook, build offsite and so on, they're innovative, they're new thinkers. They want to come forth with new ways of doing things. And as an industry, and we as tier one contractors, for example, we have a role to play, and it's to foment and enable innovation. It plays a critical role in this, I call it inflection point that the construction industry is going through. We have to enable it. We have to open the doors to innovation. We have to actually put some R&D, into it, and because it is through these startup, tech companies and these kind of government-led initiatives of new ways of thinking that we are going to get to a position where the recognition and the adoption of industrialized construction as a norm and as not as an ad hoc exercise. And I think innovation plays an absolute critical part in at this stage of in this time where we are right now.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much. And I think just so you know, there's loads of questions flying in on the panel, on the discussion panel. So I'll come to those in a minute. I just think maybe we'll look at this as the last question before we go and ask some of the questions that have come from our delegates. And it's just looking kind of at the whole life asset of an asset and how technology can assist. Because obviously, again, on UK Construction Week last week, we talked a lot about how construction now doesn't look at just building a project and that's it, walking away. It's much more about the life of an asset. How do you see technology being able to assist here with the kind of the whole life of an asset? Steve, should we start with you?
Oh, it's quite a broad topic, really, isn't it? So I think to a certain degree it can help with the design side of things. Because obviously you're designing for a purpose and a particular life. So I think from that perspective, I think that just follows through into your choice around materials you use and how you use some of the MMC techniques. I think that to a certain degree, integrating things like IoT into components and modules and stuff will obviously help, and that seems to be getting quite a lot of interest now and a lot more adoption depending on where you go in the world. Generally, I think, and I know this has been talked about for years, but that whole conversation around the life cycle of an asset, lots of talk about it, but not a great deal of action until very recently, and sort of probably ending with things like this whole concept of digital twin, which is, again, lots of conversation, lots of bits of technology, but nothing really sitting there that probably the people could pick up and say, here's a platform I can use across my lifecycle asset.
It's going to be probably driven by the client, hasn't it? I suppose is that part of the challenge?
Yeah, if you've got educated clients, of course, but some, I think the supply chain can bring value to the client as well.
Yeah. Cool. Does anyone else want to answer this question?
Yeah, I'd like to add a bit. I think one of the very interesting things, going back to the playbook again, is the focus on whole life carbon as well as whole life cost. And one of the reasons I'm very interested in that is because if you're using investment appraisal tools like discounted cash flows, internal rate of returns, etc., then you're discounting the money flows by an interest rate, a discount rate. And okay, for governments that's relatively low, but for the private sector it's significantly higher, and that very quickly starts to discount literally the longer term benefits of some of the approaches we could have. Interestingly, if you think about carbon, you don't discount carbon. Carbon is carbon, whether it's now or whether it's in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. So I think that the whole focus moving more towards the carbon equation and whole life carbon is going to make whole life considerations in general much more pertinent and less discounted by the financial aspects. And the other thing is, I think that the financial aspects themselves are becoming more seriously considered now, and that, you know, people are being a bit more realistic about what is the operating condition of their asset, and what are the real maintenance costs, and how can they be optimized, and how can you prolong the life of an asset, because once you've embedded a load of carbon in it, you really don't want to be knocking it down anymore if you can avoid it. You know, you need to be able to maintain it and repurpose it. So I think the whole life thing is really starting to become real, as opposed to a wish.
Mm-hmm. And I guess we can see now the technology is there to support and assist with that. Is that, would you say that is right?
Yeah, I think there are certainly, you know, there are tools that are becoming available that help the BIM toolkit help decision making. You know, things that there might have been databases around from 5 or 10 years ago, but they were not that accessible and not that easy to apply to a project. Whereas that side of things is getting easier.
Cool. Jamie or Philippe, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm bound to harp on about the platforms thing, but I think there's something really interesting, I think, that will happen with platforms, where currently every building is a prototype. So even if you learn something useful about that building, like the data doesn't go anywhere other than maybe make that building slightly better. I think the idea of these repeatable components, you could, as Steve says, you know, I think IoT is going to start becoming more of a thing. You could start to capture the data about certain configurations, how they perform, and go, that's useful for informing the next generation and making them better. So I think there's some, I think we're miles off digital twins actually, but I think there's a load of interim things we'll do where the digital and physical will start to talk to each other much in a much better way. But I also think I don't think design for disassembly is going to be a thing. I don't think we're really going to take buildings apart after 60 years and repurpose them. But I think future adaptability is going to be much more likely. So I think my guess is we'll end up building, I don't know who first came up with the phrase long life, loose fit, but I think we'll build kind of long life, loose fit superstructures. We'll have facades that we repurpose every 20, 30 years, fit out that we move every 5, 10 years. So I think we'll stop thinking necessarily of buildings as kind of completely fixed assets, and more current configurations of a set of components that we might tweak and adapt over time. But I don't think we'll fundamentally take things apart, rebuild and repurpose them. I think it'll be a bit more nuanced than that. Again, it won't be the kind of silver bullet, but again, I think the technology will help that. I think the use of standard components is massively going to help that. Standard interfaces is only going to help that. So again, we're heading in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to do in that space.
Cool. Philippe?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, spot on there, Jamie. Similar thoughts here. I think that, yeah, the technology is there, Nathan, to actually track a component all the way from its conception and design, delivery, use, and disposal of, or reuse rather. So we have that, and if that is the essence, or this, of a digital twin, so be it. To me, digital twin is a bit of a loose concept at the moment, but yeah, we do have the ability and the technology available to us to track every single component of a built asset. So let's do that, right? Because in doing so, we can actually see has it been maintained? Can it perform for another 15 years? Can it recycle this component? Decomposing a building, I agree. I think it's a bit far-fetched, but hey, probably Henry Ford thought the same back in the 20s. Thinking my car is not going to be taken apart and reused. And in fact, it does. That's what happens today. So I think the opportunity is huge for this area of rethinking what the life cycle of an asset is. And I think we have to start looking at these built assets as components. And then that's when I jump in the wagon of Jamie, when I think standardized components for construction ought to be considered. We would definitely support and enjoy Tier 1 contractors having that approach because of the flexibility and the better service provision we can provide to our customers.
Yeah. Okay. So as I said, we've got loads of questions, so I probably won't be able to get through them all because we've only got 10 minutes left. But I'll ask this first one, and maybe it might be Jamie or Steve who'd be best placed to answer this one. But I wanted to ask this one as well. Actually, you've talked about the global growth of MMC. Where does the UK sit in comparison, and is there a possibility we could become a world leader? So, well, Jamie or Nigel or whoever.
I'll have a go. I think we're certainly things like the BIM standards are incredibly well respected, and the fact that we kind of got there first, and obviously, the ISO 19650, the fact that that's become the sort of, almost global de facto standard, gives us a huge advantage. I think we've been looking at this for longer maybe than other people. So yeah, the opportunity is definitely to become a world leader in this. So again, I'm bound to keep on about the kind of sort of the construction playbook, the hub, the kind of the effort's been put in. We have the opportunity to do this incredibly well and lead the world. As I say, my fear is that we won't, because the politics and the kind of fear of changing things, when the the incentivization, the business models will get in the way, and North America will overtake us. So, challenge is on. I think it's going to happen, I suspect, in one of those two places. I think Asia will be slightly behind, but yeah, we could definitely do this, but will we? I don't know. Let's see.
With all these trade deals being talked about, maybe we should be lobbying for MMC to be in there, Nigel.
Yeah, I think Jamie's comments are very pertinent. I think we need to think about standards more than we do. The ISO standard with BIM is a great example of how it can be really useful to us. At the moment, the Chinese are promoting revision of ISO standards for modular MMC. So I think we need to be part of that discussion and make sure we stay in there. And I'd also agree with Jamie that there's a lot more money being invested in innovations in modern methods of construction and carbon stroke energy stateside at the moment, which is understandable. It's a much bigger market, so we have the ability to be in the lead and amongst the leaders, but there are others that are also aspiring to do that.
Cool. All right. Good stuff. There's a question that's come in here around skills. Is obviously the potential here is massive, but do we have a skills gap when it comes? This is from Sarah Copperald. Do we have a skills gap on MMC to build at scale? And if so, what are the government doing about it? I don't know who'd like to take that one.
I think I can help with the first part of that question. I don't think I can answer on behalf of the government, but there definitely is a skills gap, and not just in MMC or industrialized construction. I think that the gap is there, ever so present in the construction industry. However, I will say it has a solution. It's not unsolvable, and it is down to us to put the effort necessary to make sure that the learning and the knowledge share exists amongst us as an industry. So it's not unsolvable. I do welcome to, I do encourage the audience to not think of it negatively, but instead, think as a positive challenge.
Okay. Did anyone else want to answer this one?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind making a couple of observations. Yeah. I think in terms of skills, it starts with designers understanding what's available to design with, and things like the rule book that JB was talking about for platforms is going to be a very useful thing. The update of the RIBA DFMA overlay for the plan of work is another thing that's coming through. We need to the design aspects need to be addressed in terms of skills, and they are. But they are in some ways more challenging than the factory end of things and the site end of things, because when you're using construction systems that are repetitive in terms of the operations, etc., it doesn't take that long to train the team. For example, the example that Jamie gave, where we were doing the Gatwick and Heathrow projects, and we recruited from Manpower. We actually allowed 2 weeks to train that factory team, and it was the most productive team we had. And half of that was a training about working in a factory and health and safety and those sorts of things, the more general aspects. And half of the training was about how to put the product together, right? But we had a very, very effective team. and it was mobilized quite quickly. We ran 4 big projects through that factory, but there were gaps in between the projects. They weren't all contiguous, and so that last team, basically the factory was taken out of the container and restarted with that team. So it was a very interesting experiment.
Okay, Jamie, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, you've nailed it. That's a really interesting, really good point. I was going to talk about the kind of the fact that we can train people a lot quickly, but you're right. We like the term actually design for manufacture and assembly because that's what it says on the tin. It's designed for manufacture and assembly, and if you don't design it in the right way, then you'll always be kind of retrofitting and compromising either the design or the kind of systems that you bolt onto it. But Nigel's right. It starts with the designers, and I think, for very good reasons, the design community is split into, very siloed disciplines and then lots of sub-disciplines. And then, people tend to look at either one sector or one part. They do either master planning or concept or executive architect. And it's completely holistic. It's very, very joined up. And I think, that's going to be one of the blockers actually, is the fact that we've kind of, for really sensible reasons, split ourselves into lots of sub-disciplines, looking at only sectors and only parts of projects, getting that kind of much more holistic view and thinking through the construction phase in the design phase. That is a massive challenge. So Nigel's right. It's not down at the back end. It's at the front end of actually setting up the projects and designing towards a particular supply chain. That's where the battleground's going to be.
That's interesting. We've got a question here from Dan Brown, which kind of probably leads on to this a little bit. And he's asked, what are the key software packages that architects and designers should be using so that they can integrate with manufacturing processes and factory processes to kind of make sure that everything fits, and also to free time and create increase creativity? So I don't know if anyone can answer that, but Philippe, is that something maybe you could, from a Skanska point of view, is what sort of software people should be using and where do they go?
Well, Minecraft to start with, but go on, Philippe, give a proper answer.
Well, I don't know actually. I don't know how to take this question, Nathan, to be honest. I don't think there is a specific, kind of a set of tools that one ought to, jump on. I think I'm going to give you a generic answer. I think the approach needs to be, if it doesn't exist, create it. And I'm going to go back to that innovation aspect. We're trying to solve problems. We're trying to fix something in a different way. And I don't think we should be limited to, the tools that exist already on how you can take an approach to, delivering something. I really struggle with that, Nathan. As you can see, I cannot bring myself to think that way. I'm so sorry. But I think, please, be the driver of the change, be the driver of, the new approach that you want to take. If it doesn't exist, reach out to Autodesk, reach out to Microsoft, reach out to, whoever it is, because, they want to be part of it. They want to, get the benefits of, mass usage of their tools. So they will listen. I'm sorry, Nathan, I don't think that's the answer you were looking for, but
no,
if I can jump in, I mean, hopefully people have seen, we developed some open source configurators, one for schools, for DFE, one for housing for the Mayor of London, to kind of fill in that early stage gap. So, a lot of the kind of authoring tools kick in once you've got a concept. So there was a kind of digital bit missing. So we developed some configurators. You can find it on YouTube. The schools, when we literally beta test on my 9-year-old son, we got a group of 9-year-olds in Hackney designing schools, because they, that's why I said the kind of Minecraft thing. So Philippe's right. We kind of said there's a missing part of configuration at the front end. We'll develop tools for that, and then we've subsequently worked with Autodesk to get a kind of Prism into platforms workflow to sort of like start to link it up to Revit and things. But the Minecraft thing was a bit flippant, but there is an entire generation of people who have only ever worked in a completely 3D environment using standard products that globally co-create stuff. And you go, that generation knows how to do this stuff, and if the tools don't exist, maybe they'll author them, but we need to get them here first, and then that will start to change.
And I understand what you mean about the Minecraft. I accept the comment. I think that the whole thing about low code as well, I think is a part. You're talking about generational approach to this. I'm seeing now, really young people being able to do low coding and develop, processes and so on to automate certain activities. I mean, I think it's terrific, and that's encouragement that we need to see, and it's part of what we need to encourage people to do. So I understand that they're coming now, Jamie.
Yeah,
I'll give you a slightly different example, by the way, not necessarily design, but one of the topics that we're seeing a lot of engagement on is things like lean, which is a common process and set of methodologies and techniques in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the last few years, this has become a really topical set of activities in our market, in construction. And that's good, because that's a good example of where you can take something that's proven from one market into another and give instant benefit.
And there's sorry, Nigel, can I come in?
go for it.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of work that was done by Syria, a lot of it with Highways England support on applying lean thinking to construction. Build Lean is a very interesting read on that. It's very complementary to all the digital stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, we've gone slightly over the hour, and to be honest, the amount of questions, we could probably do another half an hour at least. But I know we've probably got places to go, places to be. So thank you very much to all of you. I just wanted to let you know on the poll, you'll be delighted to know that 97% of our audience here think that MMC is here to stay. I think, yeah.
It's the right answer.
Exactly. We'll find out who the 3% are and send you the details. But thank you very much, everyone. It's been really insightful, and I think we would like to keep this conversation going on this platform. And I should remind everyone as well that if you're attending this session, you can talk to other delegates who are live on here now. I gather there's about 300 people on here, so you can keep the conversation going afterwards, and you can visit suppliers and so on this platform. So thank you very much, and hopefully thank you to all of you. Thanks, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Great.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Thank you.